live. So
Great.
let me
Awesome.
see.
I'll try to
I think I
retweet
put the
that.
countdown. Nope, we are live now. So we'll
All
just
right.
give it a minute till some
Okay.
people join, and I will put this on the Facebook, even though, but I do have some viewers who do not have Twitter.
Ah.
So just in case, I'm going to put that on there. I don't want to be like ageist or anything.
Right. It's
Do you
crazy
still
now
have a
that
Facebook?
I do. I do. I have a personal Facebook, and I've got like a writer page on there too that I try to just share whatever stuff I do or other links that I like.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like my relatives and
Yeah.
stuff, and then Twitter's like, oh, fuck this, it's very different.
Yeah, yeah, same here. Yeah, exactly. I only have one Twitter account and it's all this stuff. But my Facebook, I post political stuff on Facebook a little bit, but it's like family friend stuff for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. My family like knows how I am, but still I'm like, I'm just gonna play it safe and put memes of like 80s hair bands and stuff like that, just in case. Um, okay, looks like we have some people, so we will get started. And I'm so glad to have you. You've been on my list of, I literally have a list of people I want to ask. And I believe it was Ryan Knight who told me to have you on originally. I think so. But in any case, thank you so much for joining. You guys, this is Elias. How do you say it again?
Elias, you got it. You got it. Thanks,
Okay,
Joy.
great. Yeah, it's not like we went over it beforehand, so you are a writer, and I love your work. You've been touching on immigration, especially lately, which is unfortunately something a lot of people like in our community talk about, but you don't hear about it very much since Trump was out of office, as far as the news and politician wise. So it's very important, the work you're doing. So the first article I saw from you, well, actually, aside from today, the most recent article was about Haiti and how the Haitian immigrants were being rounded up so inhumanely. And of course, nobody's talking about it anymore because, new shiny objects have come out. And, thank you for covering that, first of all. Oh, and also, as a visually impaired person, thank you so much for also having the button to read, where you read us your articles, because that was like I was so excited about that, because I'm like, I don't have to like get my machines and stuff like that. I can actually listen to them. So I digress. But
I'm glad that was helpful. I hadn't been doing it enough, but I wanted to start doing it for at least every essay. I'm trying to catch up and not be so much of an asshole. So I'm glad it's helpful. I'm glad. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So what inspired you to write that article about that treatment of Haiti,
Yeah,
of Haitians?
I like yeah. I like a lot of folks started seeing images and videos of Haitian migrants who, by all appearances and accounts, were gathering at the border in an attempt to soon apply for asylum, which of course is their not only their moral right, but their legal right under international law and indeed even United States law. And that we see these folks that are victims of U.S. empire gathering at our borders or coming towards us all the time, and it's unfortunate, and we kind of get numb to it. But the images that we all started seeing, thanks to some great on the ground reporters there, lay people and professional reporters alike, was just was just too stark to ignore. We saw the United States Border Patrol, Customs and Border Patrol officers, federal officers, taking reins from horseback and whipping people. We heard them insulting the Haitians and indeed the entire nation of Haiti itself, but just spewing invective. And then I wanted to read more about it, and I was just struck by not just the treatment, but then the ensuing discourse, seeing the people that in mainstream politics like to identify themselves as progressive or on the left, like the Biden administration. Obviously we have our own opinions on if they are and they're not, but they like to say they're progressive. They like to say they're from the left in their entire party. And we saw them using the exact same type of language that not just the Donald Trump administration that preceded them used to refer to people from countries like Haiti, like nations like Haiti and migrants in general, but really enacting the exact same type of policy. So, and those two things kind of go hand in hand with this Title 42, which was an order, really xenophobic and racist order from the Trump administration that used the pandemic as pretense to deny people their legal right to seek asylum at our border. We did that with Central American and migrants during the Trump administration. We continue to do so now. And Joe Biden, although saying during the campaign that he wanted to vaguely end Trump's policies at the border and the treatment, they've just continued it. And we see that with the amount of people in our concentration camps, the amount of Central Americans in our concentration camps, they're increasing or at least staying the same. They continue to be tortured. They continue to separate families. And to see Haitians at the border being whipped, being insulted, being denied their legal rights, it just reminded me too much of the things I've been writing about of Latin Americans, which hits close to home myself, with a family of immigrants, and it was just another like visceral example to me of how the empire always stays the same. Sometimes we change the players, we change the parties, we change the names of policies, we change the names of the facilities that we inhumanely treat people in, but empire stays cruel. And it needed to be discussed because the Biden administration was defending the use of Title 42, which is denying people their legal right to asylum. It was defending the Border Patrol's treatment, saying they were merely enforcing the law. And even once they were shamed, even the reforms that they announced that they would order the Border Patrol to enact, like getting rid of horses as though the horses were the problem and not the people and the systems of oppression. Now we know a week or so later that horses are still being used. The Border Patrol is, still basically doing the exact same thing. So I was just driven by those visceral images, and it was a stark reminder that no matter who we elect, empire continues its kind of cruel war machine that creates a need for migrants and refugees. And then once we create those conditions that produce these desperate conditions, we then further the cruelty by brutalizing these folks, at best brutalizing them, at worst we put them in prisons and profit off of them, because so often these are for-profit places. So I really try to look at, oftentimes in my work, the ways in which the language and the policies stay the same throughout United States history, even now when we think we're doing better and more enlightened. So yeah, I don't know. I was just touched like everyone else was, and I felt like what wasn't being discussed was the underlying conditions that created refugees. And I felt like the mainstream media was not discussing the fact that the United States government, even under this administration, was continuing to just simply violate international and our own domestic law by denying them the right, and instead discussing all sorts of things like, hey, what are we supposed to do with them? And like, what can Biden do? It's not his fault that they're here, and just totally denying our breaking of the law, totally denying that Biden continues policies of empire that create these conditions, including so many coups in Haiti, and certainly what was missing from this conversation was a history of Haiti, a remarkable nation that is the result of Black people insisting on their freedom and fighting their enslavement against the largest European powers of the time, successfully winning it and then subsequently being punished for the rest of their history. And I don't think a lot of people realize that just 100 years ago, the United States had
Yeah, I
invaded
think
it was invaded Haiti.
it was a rude awakening for so many
No, go
people who
ahead.
think
Yeah.
that when they think of immigration reform, they automatically think of Hispanic people, Mexican people, but their Haitians were the largest number of people who were being deported. And I cannot help but think of in 2016 when I was at Occupy DNC and we were protesting the convention. um, I met a group of Haitians who were there protesting Hillary as well, but they were protesting her because, she stole billions of dollars from them after the hurricane so-called relief fund. And that was when I really started waking up to just how, horrible they are treated. And then to see our treatment of them. And of course, these much of these videos and pictures were leaked. That's how we found out about this. And what was, not that I expected like something, grand and profound from Biden, but what was your take when he came out and they were kind of forced to speak on it because it was getting talked about? What was your reaction when you heard just kind of how they glossed over it?
Yeah, I think you're right. They do gloss over it. It's really discussed. They're certainly glossing over the fact that they kept the same policy of what can benignly be called deterrence, right? By saying that the Trump administration did, but which is saying, hey, listen, don't come. This is a dangerous journey. Said that to Central Americans at the onset of this administration. They said President Biden directly, as well as Vice President Harris, said the same type of thing. And what's embedded in that language, although they're explicitly referring to just, hey, it's dangerous to go across countries, of course, for all sorts of obvious reasons. What's also implied there, and which is well known in the global South and in the communities in our neighboring nations, is how horribly we treat people when they come here, and how horribly we have Mexico treat migrants when they come as well. So implied there is a threat that we're going to abuse you, we're going to torture you, we're going to possibly kidnap your children. They certainly glossed over the fact that they were continuing that same type of policy of deterrence, because God knows they weren't going to stop devastating countries like Haiti and Central American countries with coups and economic neocolonialism. They said, hey, we're just going to threaten them. So they gloss over that for certain. Then they gloss over, by doing that, they gloss over the root causes, because they simply can't make mention of that, because then they would speak poorly of America. But then they completely gloss over the on the ground treatment that we were seeing, which is another level of disgust, and it shows how even rhetorically sometimes the Democrats and people like Donald Trump are very much the same. They're very cruel. They may not use as much profanity, but they're quite cruel. To see Press Secretary Psaki say they're just enforcing the law. They're just enforcing the law. To stand behind the law, which is almost always set in place by the powerful to attack the marginalized. As we were referencing these videos of people being insulted and whipped, it's just disgusting. I mean, it's just maddening, and it's infuriating, and it's especially infuriating coming from the party and from leadership that said, hey, you've got to vote for us because there's kids in cages. You got to vote for us because Donald Trump is a racist. He treats migrants poorly. It's just like on so many other issues, just a bald, revealed hypocrisy and arrogance, and taking people for granted, and also in just not really caring about lives.
Blue cages are overflow facilities, though. So
That's right. That's right.
There is a difference. Let's just clarify.
Yes. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Freaking AOC is the one that said overflow facility. And I'm like, didn't you just wear an Abolish Ice cap like a week ago?
She was wearing a cap on a video I know. I was just wearing an Abolishing Ice cap. A Twitter user pointed out to me when I was just kind of calling her out when she was encouraging people in California to come out and vote for Gavin Newsom in the recall election. She was wearing an Abolish Ice cap. At the moment, she's advocating for Governor Newsom, who himself has a long history of basically kidnapping migrant children, of violating sanctuary city like protocols, and turning over minors to Border Patrol in violation of the law again. I mean, it's just total bald hypocrisy, not just from the establishment Democrats, but from those who claim to be socialist, those who claim to be there to cause a ruckus. You're right. It's totally gross. Actual Latina like AOC to be doing that is it's not surprising at this point, but it's absolutely disgusting, and it doesn't get enough attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't help but think the reason these like so-called progressives do stuff like this is because a lot of their sycophants don't want to do the research. So they're just like, yes, queen, oh my God, abolish ICE. Yes, that's what we need. And it's like, can you just look at what she's recently voted on? Because she's not really making a lot of sense. But cognitive dissonance is, rampant, especially when it comes to fans of, the pop stars like the Squad. And it's so sad. But yeah, I mean, I guess my thing is the irony that these people we are treating people in other countries so poorly that they feel they need to escape, but they come to the country of the people who are treating them poorly because they're safer here than in their own country. That is so fucked up. That is beyond irony. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, no, that's right. I know that that's a good way of putting it. My friend Sam Yang, who has great podcast as well. I remember him saying something. I think it was something he wrote, an essay he wrote one time, and he was discussing that phenomenon. He's an immigrant, and he was saying how basically I'm gonna mess this up, but what you were talking about, Joy, is how really that a lot of times victims of U.S. empire, they're really aware that the only place that you can really be safe from our missiles and our bombs and our coups is by going into the heart of that same empire that destabilized your nation, that killed your family. And what a horrible irony that is. And I don't think it's lost on immigrants. Some immigrants themselves, we have cognitive dissonance, and it's tough, and we have a need to kind of like prove our Americanness and kind of worship the flag. But others, I think, are acutely aware of that, and it's such a sad irony indeed.
It really is. Do you support abolishing ICE?
Yeah, I do. It certainly doesn't need to exist. We were able to abuse immigrants and migrants quite well for centuries without it. I'm sure they can find a way to do it without it. But yeah, it was just in the early part of this century, part of the huge expansion of the federal government, huge expansion of authoritarian powers vested in the executive after September 11th, and it definitely became like a more efficient, more powerful weapon with which to cudgel and bludgeon migrants. And yeah, certainly, I don't think we need to have. I don't think the things that preceded it were great. I think the Border Patrol, I think, needs to be abolished. I mean, I want to abolish policing and our carceral system as we know it completely. So I would certainly throw the Border Patrol, which has always been explicitly a racist, policing institution. It's not officer friendly. It was made as a compromise with white supremacist groups that were mad that we didn't place a limit on how many Mexican migrants you can have, as we did with other groups, because we wanted cheap labor. So they said, all right, as a compromise, we'll create this Border Patrol. We'll take a bunch of sheriffs, take a bunch of Texas Rangers who got famous for shooting Mexicans in the back, and we'll give this as a compromise. So I definitely wanted, Border Patrol to go, and that part of customs. And I definitely think ICE needs to be abolished. It's one of those things. It's a bummer because it needs to happen. It's one of those. It's a radical notion. I think it's a necessary thing, but then it's been co-opted by what I can only assume are disingenuous people in power, like Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others who say it without putting any type of effort behind it, who support politicians who giddily use ICE to abuse migrants. So I think it needs to happen. I'm afraid that it's kind of losing its meaning. It's losing its potency as a message because it's being co-opted by those in power. But I definitely think it should be abolished,
Absolutely.
along with a lot of other apparatuses.
Yeah, seriously, like we could go down the line very easily.
Right. I want to abolish the United States Senate as we know it. Don't get me started on ICE.
Yeah, I mean, we're watching. You're right. When it was primary season and Bernard dropped out, and they're like, "You better vote for Biden," and because there's kids in cages, and if you don't care about kids in cages. And I was like, you are dumb as fuck because that shit all started under that fucker. And my state is not going to lose by one vote. So no, I am not voting for him. Like, he told me not to anyway. So fuck him. So like, and then here we go. Like,
yeah, he loved telling people not to vote for him, right?
Yeah.
Joe Biden loved telling people not to vote for him during that campaign.
That's so insane. Like, we have a president who told people not to vote for him and a vice president who didn't get a single vote. What the fuck is going on? Like, nobody likes either of you, but somehow here we are. And everyone's trying to rationalize, but he's not Trump. Yeah, okay, but there could be more than one douche canoe. Like, it's allowed. I mean,
that's right.
That's right. God, it's so frustrating.
The whole system is at fault, right? The players are interchangeable, but people they really get, for different reasons, get caught up in this tribalism or get fooled by the allure of electoralism. And yeah, it's hard to reconcile at this point. And like, don't get me wrong, when I was younger, I worked on Democratic campaigns. I have different ever-changing politics, and I like to think I'm becoming more coherent and certainly becoming more radical as I go. But to see people in positions of privilege, whatever they may be, still just stand behind these politicians and still just have, like you mentioned earlier, this cognitive dissonance is just unjustifiable. I don't begrudge anyone for tactically jumping on board with any particular opportunity, like these dreamers now who may or may not have any interest in Joe Biden or may not like him in the least or the Democratic Party in the least, but they see an opportunity to maybe include some pathway citizenship in this reconciliation bill. So they're going to encourage people to vote for that. Like, I'm not downing that. But yeah, to see kind of mainstream folks, liberals who adopted these crocodile tears for all sorts of issues that they didn't care about prior to Donald Trump, and certainly subsequent to his leaving the White House, have not shown, not demonstrated a lot of care either. I've lost my patience with that pretty much, and I don't give anyone more, not that anyone asked, but I don't really give people much more credit based on who they voted for at this point. Someone doesn't deserve more credit if they voted for Joe Biden in my book than they voted for Donald Trump. I just feel like, it's all pretty much effectively equally bad to most with regards to most issues and most marginalized groups, or they just equally, it doesn't matter because the work is done elsewhere. But yeah, I'm with you. It's really gross to see happening, and like they insisted they wouldn't. And I'm talking now about like we were talking offline about Facebook and stuff. I'm talking about my friends, my family, all these colleagues who swore that if we only voted for Biden, they would be the first ones to help us push him left. And I haven't heard shit from them since. I haven't seen them posting about the deaths and the abuse in the concentration camps. I haven't seen them post about the increased numbers. I haven't seen them talk about the Haitian migrants being abused. I haven't seen them talk about journalists being tortured and by the American government. I haven't seen anything from them, and it's just no way to justify that in my view.
Absolutely. And I have seen some people with buyer's remorse on Twitter. Like, I regret voting for Biden.
Mm.
Listen, you knew what you were voting for. If you voted for him, that's your choice. But you knew.
Yeah.
He didn't dupe you. He told you exactly who he was for fucking 30 years. And you did it because, you're in a red state, or you were scared of Trump or whatever. That's your prerogative. I don't vote shame, but don't act surprised by what he's doing. I mean, we all knew he was garbage. And
no, that's right. And like now, for those with that buyer's remorse, okay, we don't have to shame you, although I just spent a few minutes shaming them. But like, what are you gonna do now? That's fine. Hey, I voted for war criminals too, right? Of course I have. I have. Like everyone every United States president that's ever been in office ends up being awful. So and I voted for some of them. So I have that to account for. But now what are we gonna do? Okay, you voted for Biden. Things aren't going well. Okay, the least you can do is take responsibility for the people that are in power that you voted to put in power, and that's a little bit of what I try to talk about. Like in the end of one of the pieces on Haiti, and I have a third one coming this week later. But I said, we did this, right? Maybe not all of us. I didn't happen to vote for Joe Biden this time, right? But let's say we as a nation are doing this. We're doing this to Haitians. It's happening now, and in the last lines, I'm talking to pretty much Democrats, people that voted Democrat for any number of reasons. They're faced with like usual poor choices with an election. I said this cruelty is a violation of human dignity and all morality, as well as the law, and it's being committed by the people we voted for. So it's our fault, and what we do in response, hopefully with repentant hearts, is up to us. So hey, you voted for a crappy person. So did I when I voted for Barack Obama in 2008. Okay, what am I going to do now? Am I going to call him out? Am I going to try to draw attention to it with my immediate circle? Yes or no? Am I going to stop paying attention? That's up to us, and that's up to them. So they can be allies. That's good. That's a powerful thing, right? For someone to say, hey, I voted for Joe Biden 8 months ago, or whatever it is now, 10 months ago, and or almost a year, I guess. I'm losing track of time, losing my mind. I voted for him, but now, like these folks you mentioned on Twitter, like, hey, I realized I made a mistake. All right, that's useful. Speak up. Tell your friends about that. Let's not do this again.
Absolutely. I think, and we're kind of getting a little off topic, but I kind of think that the Dems want to lose in 2022. It's so much easier to just blame Republicans, for everything than have to, because they won't take responsibility for shit. We learned that with Hillary. So, I mean, it would, and monetarily, it's so beneficial for them when Republicans are in office. So it kind of a segue into that, Sinema and Manchin, who are essentially dinos, Democrat in name only, they are Republicans. The Dems are kind of playing this, they're, the outsiders and stuff. No, they're not. They're just outspoken. So your article you dropped today, which is excellent, was about like the depth behind the people who confronted Sinema in the bathroom. It's not just, oh my God, they attacked a rep in the bathroom, where people are being like, it's personal space and things like that. We have to go deeper than that. It was, whether you want to call it a tactic or not, it's an opportunity. Look, you see a rep who is creating people's lives into hell. We are literally watching eugenics of the poor, and you see this opportunity like, holy shit, this person is stopping something from happening, and hell yeah, I'm going to take that fucking opportunity. So, like, your article, I think, just nailed it. I'm going to try and pull up.
Thank you.
I took a screenshot
Yeah, if there's a part you want me to look at, let me know the area and I'll pull it out
see.
myself too.
I think. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Can you see that?
Cool. I can. Yeah.
Okay. Can you
All
read
right.
that?
Definitely. All right. So the pearl clutching liberals and conservatives who are aghast at denizens daring to approach their elected officials with anything other than adoration at sanctioned times and in allowed spaces is easily dismissible. Simply put, we are not concerned with what those who don't view us as fully human think of our approaches. Their esteem means nothing to us. Beyond that, the privileged don't get to decide the means and manner with which the marginalized resist.
Absolutely. Like that was so spot on. That's, I'm always, as an activist who's in the street all the time, and, I'm so over people saying, well, don't be mean about it. Don't be mean. We're experiencing people going through violence. Our healthcare system is violence. We're unhousing people. It's violence. Like, I'm not going to be polite about this shit. Like, fuck that. Like, that is pure privilege. Anyone who says, well, only go about it this way. Did she look like she was going to sit down and have a talk with them? No. So, what other option do you have? And
Right.
as you pointed out in the article, there were other people who confronted her very nicely and said, hi, and thank you for your time, and she wasn't willing to speak with them. So what other choices do we have? They don't answer their phones, they don't check their emails. You get garbage, trite, copy and paste things back if they even open them. I mean, when people are desperate, they are going to do whatever it takes, and it is important that we as humanity acknowledge that maybe it's not affecting us this way, but if they felt the need as undocumented people to, like, when you're desperate, you're going to do fucking anything. You're just going to do anything. And if someone's holding up something you're passionate about, you're going to fucking confront them. They weren't physical. They weren't, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, it was literally just, she wasn't in the bathroom. That's what I thought at first. I was like,
right.
damn, like, oh shit, I don't agree with that. But she was just like in the bathroom, and like at first I was like, okay, that's different. That's not okay. But yeah,
right. She was in the process of evacuating. Thank you. No, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you letting me share some of it now. And I think, it's really gross to see folks who are in positions of extreme privilege and relatively speaking in cases like this try to police the manner and the tone that just people in just emergency situations can address it. Furthermore, the woman on the airplane, I think Karina, who identified her as Karina, couldn't have been more like, she's more polite than I've ever been in anything in my life, right? She's more patient. She certainly didn't make anyone, there was no threats of violence. There's nothing of that nature. And the students in the pursued Senator Sinema, as it appeared, she tried to escape their questioning into the restroom to insist on it. I still think that is about the bare minimum that we should feel obligated to do as people, as Americans. And I consider them Americans regardless of their document status. It's an opportunity, as you said. If you're in an emergency situation, if there are things you believe in, even if from afar, if it doesn't affect you directly, if you see someone in power, if you see a United States senator, this is among the most powerful people in the history of humankind. If you see them and you don't take an opportunity to discuss with them, you're abdicating your responsibilities. Not only are these appropriate actions, not only are these permissible, but I think it's incumbent upon us to do at least this, because apparently electing these folks didn't do the trick. So we need to make politicians feel uncomfortable. We need to harass them. We need to threaten them with electoral consequences. And we need to make life unlivable for the powerful if they are attacking us and making our lives unlivable on a daily basis with their policies and with their refusal to take up certain issues. I think there's nothing more obvious about what it's supposed to mean to be an American than that. But like so many American values that we say we hold dear, it's only certain people that are allowed to do it. It's certain, only landed slave owning racist straight men were allowed to be revolutionaries, and those are the only revolution we're allowed to celebrate. Women need to keep their voices down. People of color, who women, men, otherwise, need to keep their voices down and watch their tone. We need to be gradual. We need to be moderate with our approach and how we address our politicians, and we have that relationship inverted. We need to have basically an autocracy of the plurality. We need to boss them around. We need to make politicians afraid of us in terms of their career chances. We don't need to be reverent around them. They need to kowtow to us. And if we who don't have money for fundraisers, if we who don't have budgets to hire lobbyists to get access to politicians, don't at least bring these things up on the rare, once in a blue moon shooting star opportunity that we see them, then then we're not doing what we should as Americans. And I probably haven't as much as I should. But these folks, these immigrant activists, some of whom are identifying as undocumented, had the courage to videotape themselves, to get themselves on the radar of some of the most powerful people and institutions in the country, in a nation that hates them, in a nation that has already deported their families. They documented themselves. They put themselves on camera, more importantly than putting the politician on camera. And they put themselves on the radar by committing some real acts of democracy. And I think people lose sight of all the different elements of democracy. They only think about voting. Direct action, simply talking to your peer, elected official, it should be allowed. It should be encouraged. And I think it's the progressive voices who came out in criticism, because the liberals and the people and the reactionaries like Stephen Miller came out and said, this is gross, this is bad, this is not right. Progressives, I've seen essays and plenty of tweets, but even professional journalists saying this is imprudent, this is silly, this is performative, this is not going to this is not going to convince Senator Sinema. This is not going to convince politicians to take your side. This isn't about convincing them of anything with rhetoric. This is about making them afraid. This is about making them uncomfortable until they do what we need. This is about demonstrating, about protesting. That's a crucial part of what democracy is, and that's what politics always is. Even if you're powerful to powerful, they leverage power. They leverage situations against one another. They don't convince one another with their reasoning and the strength of their reasoning. They actually just leverage whatever power they have to get what they need done. So I see among progressives either a sincere or put on misapprehension of what politics itself is. It is absolutely fine. In fact, it's really the only options available for people who aren't in power to do things like this, to harass politicians, to bother them, to make life unlivable as they're oppressing people. That's the only things we have at our disposal. If we don't use those tools.
Exactly. This past year, I have been through hell on social media. Like I first shared my story of going blind at Force the Vote town hall to 130,000 people, like live, and I got threats. I got doxxed. I mean, you name it. We're going to call Social Security and tell them you're faking. I mean, you have no idea. And then, I was one of the lead national organizers of the 56 Medicare for All marches. Also, attacks. And then I went to AOC's office with Susan Sarandon and we did like a call to action. Like, you haven't even tweeted about Medicare for All in 9 months, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I just get so much shit. And it's not just me, but it's like, you didn't want me to force the vote. You didn't want me to march. You didn't want me to go to AOC's office. What in the fuck do I have your approval to do? Please tell me, because
That's right.
give me something,
that's
okay?
right.
And they never answer. They're just
Mhm.
slacktivists. They sit there and tweet all day and shun people who really are trying to change things. It's so sad. And no, you're not. I mean, I don't like labels, but no, you're not a fucking leftist if you're shaming people from action, because that's what being a fucking leftist is. You get those feet in the street. If you don't, and you don't speak truth to power, you're a fucking shit lib. Like, you're being apologetic for the people who are causing the pain. I mean, it really does come down to that. I wish people would just fucking be more aware.
No, you're so right. And yeah, the amount of abuse actual true activists like yourself have to put up with from folks who insist they're allies is just it's just disgusting. And like you say, they ultimately, when it gets down to it, they have no suggestions for what tools are appropriate to use. And I think, we fall into these cults of personalities just as much as the people that we make fun of on the right. The cults of personality is around someone like Senator Sanders, who, or as Representatives Alexander Ocasio-Cortez or Ilhan Omar, any of these folks, or any of the people that preceded them. It's just as illogical. It's just as destructive as any type of MAGA mentality. And it's really not about the substance. It's just people that have an identity and they enjoy a certain amount of privilege and they like things as they are, and they want to kind of play games with ideas that are abstractions to them, with suffering that is an abstraction to them. And if they're not going to get involved, that's one thing. If I'm not going to get on the street every day and or as much as real activists like yourself, okay, that's one thing. But I damn sure better not, when I put pen to paper with what I do for a living, better not dissuade you all from doing it. I better not criticize you all for doing it. I better not criticize tact without offering proven alternatives. And I certainly, the other stuff, the actual like just abuse is and explicit is just it's just disgusting. It's as ugly as anything that we ever criticize from neo Nazis and stuff like that. And I'm so sorry that actual brave activists like yourself have to deal with that.
I mean, it sucks, but I mean, it's so worth it. You know what I mean? When at the end of things, it's the positive outweighs it so much. And when I was, when we were doing the AOC call to action, you have people saying, "Why are you doing that? She believes in Medicare for all. Why don't you go to Manchin?" Listen, he never said he supported Medicare for
That's
all.
right.
Why the hell am I going to go to, what the hell does he want? Like,
again, a fundamental misapprehension of politics.
Like,
they just don't understand how politics are done. You don't go to someone who's never, he's going to say, I never said I would support this. I'm still not going to support this.
Yeah.
You go to, that's a slam dunk. You go to a woman who says, yeah, I'm going to support this. I run on this almost as a single issue, right? Similar to Senator Sanders, the most popular issue is this Medicare for all. Okay, so we're 2 years in. Where are we? How about right now? We're doing these marches. We can't tweet about it. In fact, you're actually going to, do other events while you all were doing these marches. That's precisely who you go to. You go to the people who are at least on record as being sympathetic to your cause. You go at them the hardest. That's who the labor unions, who were much more militant at the time, went after during the Great Depression. They went after Roosevelt, who they felt had some possible semblance of a conscience as far as oligarchs go. And they threatened him. They said, you can have revolution or you can give us a social safety net and jobs programs. They threatened the people. You've got to threaten the politicians that have expressed solidarity with you, because you need to hold their feet to the fire, because they have all sorts of pressure out there. They got Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, yelling at them like a child on the floor. You've got, lobbyists coming in and offering them money. You've got all sorts of other pressures. If we don't hold the people who've gone on the record and expressed sympathy and empathy and solidarity with their causes, and we just hold on faith that they're going to do the right thing, then we're just historically illiterate. Because Nancy Pelosi once supported, I what I heard her support in the early '90s, if you look at the record, the type of healthcare she was supporting then in principle, I think is more transformative than even Medicare for all. And she supported that at one time, right? And look what she became. You have civil rights leaders who once were arrested in the 60s end up voting in the early 90s when they're new in Congress for the new Jim Crow's carceral system when Bill Clinton came into office. So you have to go at the people who agree with you. That is just understanding politics. You all understand politics. Your critics don't understand the basics of politics.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say to AOC, you fucking sat on my show and you straight up told me how passionate you were about Medicare for all. Rashida Tlaib, you fucking held me when I was crying and you started crying when I told you how I was going blind. And you said you were going to fight for me and people like me. Ro Khanna, you fucking sat on my show for 4 freaking times, told me how passionate you are about Medicare for all. Like, this shit's personal too, to someone like me. It's not just political. So when there's so much ableism and so much privilege to be like, yeah, you should tell her, but not like that.
Right, right.
No, I do not need your permission. I'm a fucking 42-year-old woman. I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want to do. And then I'm going to show you the pictures. So
that's right. I thought, by the way, when I was, I thought that action at her office, which was after the marches, right? Like I thought that was super, super savvy. I thought that was I only saw it, I wasn't involved. I just saw it on the internet. I saw you all doing that. I said, oh, that's super smart. You go to the biggest media market in the entire United States, so maybe you have a chance of getting some coverage. You take a famous celebrity is there doing it, and you take to task folks who said they would help you and who just showed that they're really not about it. I thought that was super super savvy at the moment. I didn't know it was coming because I wasn't involved. When I saw that, I was like, wow, that's super bright and super smart. And then to see the bad faith criticism of it, it's just so ridiculous. It's a shame we have to deal with it because it just there's almost no merit to the point of like if this was like a thesis one of my like college students gave me, I'd be like, oh, I'd send it back like a paragraph in. You got to work way more on this argument. There's nothing here. You're not showing any historical precedent. You're not making a compelling argument. You're doing, ad hominems, all sorts of stuff. It's a shame that they have the microphone. It's a shame that they have some of the numbers because on their merits, their arguments just have no they just have no convincing qualities.
absolutely. I digress, but I really digress, but as a writer myself, I'm curious, who has inspired you to get you to start writing?
Well, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. My parents always read a lot, and they read a lot to me, and they take me to the library and things of that nature. So I was lucky to always read lots of things. And I still do sports journalism, but I first got into writing through nonfiction sports journalism. And I remember as a kid, my dad had gotten me a Sports Illustrated subscription, and I would read these feature profiles. Even though I mostly do essays now, writing feature profiles are still one of my favorite things to do. So seeing, getting access to worlds and people's lives who I thought were interesting was always a big motivation. And I like coming up, I had like my favorite little columnists, but I think the people that continue to inspire me now as writers, there's so many. In terms of getting into a world and kind of exploring that and opening that up in a critical way. I have one of his collections, I think behind here, yeah, Hunter S. Thompson. I thought I really liked his reporting that he would do. What they call like gonzo journalism. I always like that. One of my favorite contemporary people is Chris Hedges, who does a lot of great essays now and books, but he does that with decades of war correspondent work to kind of like inform that. He's a big favorite of mine. And then I have like favorites from literature. I'm an Americanist, and I like I like Zora Neale Hurston a lot. She has a reputation as being like apolitical conservative. I read her completely different, and seeing her novels, novelization and work of like race and class and gender intersecting, and then also reading her later like journalistic work was always super inspiring to me. Many others. There's a ton, but yeah, I mean, I grew up reading a lot of feature profiles and wanting to get into journalism through that, and and then yeah, so many essayists as well. I really admire. So yeah, it's a lot to mention, but those are a couple that I really rely on. W.B. Du Bois, again, another versatile writer, did histories, did some journal. He was a publisher as well. He was a literary critic. That's another person that also really inspires me. Noam Chomsky's diversity of work is also really like cool to me. His scholastic work, his popular work. I had a professor, an undergraduate, Dick Simpson, who's very much alive and active in teaching, and he was phenomenal. He was a political scientist, but he did scholarly political science work, but he also did like popular work to make accessible to people. He wrote books. He wrote for newspapers. He still does, I think. He also was in office, so he was a big inspiration for me as well when I was a young adult. But yeah, so many to mention.
Awesome. Yeah, I was a literature major, so that's like I'm always like, ooh, who do you like?
Oh, very cool.
um, so I always ask each guest the same thing when we're done, and it is, what do you want to leave the viewers with? What do you want them to take away? It could be something inspiring or something, whatever, just one thing you want them to take away.
I'd say when we're looking, since we're discussing political leaders, try to pay attention to the consistency across time in the United States of language and policy. And when you do that, if you come to the same conclusion that it seems like we have, you realize that it's about systems of oppression that need to be overthrown and displaced, and not so much about individuals. And that can be discouraging because if it's more than just getting a certain person out of office, it may seem too big to handle. But I also like to think it can be inspiring because what in this regard, whatever malevolent personality we may have in office, if it's really about the systems, and if we're really aware of the potential power we have just by our numbers, then you know what? Whoever's in office, whether we won the election or lost the election, whoever's in office, we can bully them, right? So I think it's empowering once you realize there's a coherence of just a language and policy, real pernicious language and policy throughout American history. At first, it's depressing because you're like, oh, this person I liked is bad. This person I liked is bad. This person who promised this, fell through. But then it's also freeing. So you know what? Let's just use our energies to do the types of things that Joy does and her colleagues, which is go out there, not just draw attention to work and ideas like you do with your shows, but also get out there and do direct action because we can bully anyone with our superior numbers. It doesn't matter who's in office. So anyway, look at the consistency of language and policy. Realize our power in numbers, and try to look for opportunities to focus our attention on generating awareness in our immediate circles or direct action.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm definitely going to ask you back at some point because I really think you're pretty fucking awesome. So thank you for coming on. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please hit that like and subscribe. Rockfin just approved me. Thank freaking Buddha. So I can, go over there and not be not have to spell out like EPSTEIN and shit like that. So I will drop the link when that is up. And I did announce today on Ron Placone show, I was offered a show by Compton J on his other channel, which is Populist Voice Network. So I will be doing a show there every Monday night at 9:30 with 2 other comrades. And don't forget, you can get my shitlib parody book, yes, queen, at savageandpat.com. And if you are in the LA area and you have not gotten your tickets yet, Patrick and I are doing a book signing at Flappers, and comedy by Rick Overton, Jimmy Dore, Steph, and me, which is going to be a one-time, like, I don't know why I'm doing this kind of bucket list thing. So at least there'll be entertainment by how bad I may bomb. But in any case, please get tickets for Flappers. It's my first time going to California. I'm so fucking excited. And I've never met Patrick, even though we wrote a book together. So I'm so excited. But in any case, thank you again so much for joining, and much love to everyone.
My complete pleasure. Thank you so much.